Oh man, he is gone. You see him? He's up there. All these seagulls are telling me what to do, but yeah, he's up there. There it is. Hey guys, thanks for joining me on this adventure. We are in northern Utah and we are near Willard Peak and Willard Bay. This flight began in, or I should say next to, Brigham City. I launched with a few friends and a few of them went different directions. I decided to go south. It's not often that the winds work out for me to go this direction, but in this particular day the winds were fairly light and the lift was abundant. There was a couple times I had to hunt around to find a few thermals to keep me up, but once I get over to these big cliffy areas, it was awesome. We are flying right in front of Willard Peak, that kind of light colored rock there at the top. That's Willard Peak. And that next highest point right in the center, kind of to the left of the screen now, that's Ben Lomond Peak. Out here to the west you can see Willard Bay, which kind of connects up to sort of what's drying up of the Great Salt Lake. There's kind of some wetlands out there. Fresh water in the bay there, separated by a dike that keeps it from mixing with the salt water. So anyway, I had a friend reach out to me. I haven't made videos for a while on YouTube, but my friend reached out. He's a high school friend, and he said, hey, put some more content on YouTube. I've been watching this stuff. I want to get into paragliding, and he's going to be moving to Australia, and so I thought, hey, I got some video lying around, maybe I'll edit a little bit and throw it up here. This is an awesome sport. It's fun to kind of get out here in an area that I've grown up hiking, mountain biking, motorcycle riding, and to see it from this perspective is very, very different and pretty awesome. Flying here a little bit further to the south, we're getting closer to Ben Lomond Peak. I'm going to fly around for a while right in front of this big giant fault line. You can kind of see where the dirt turns into cliffs and rocks. That's a big giant fault line. And I don't know how long ago, but a long time ago, the earth kind of pushed up on one side and slid down on the other. And there's this big long strip along the Wasatch Front that exposes portions of bedrock that are pretty cool to look at from pretty much any angle, but especially when you're up here in the sky. My dad and I used to ride motorcycles up to Ben Lomond Peak when I was a kid, and we had some pretty interesting experiences doing that. I remember one time going up to Ben Lomond Peak with my dad. We weren't planning to go all the way to the peak. I was pretty little. He put me in front of him on the bike, had me holding onto the handlebars in front of him, and I'm sure this was back in the mid to late 80s. We rode up this trail that's pretty narrow. It's called the Skyline Trail. It starts in North Ogden, rides up the ridge, and I believe we passed some people coming down on horseback that informed us that somebody had crashed a motorcycle up there, rolled it off the hillside, broken his leg, and his buddies had left on motorcycles to try to go get help. This is in the day before cell phones and easy access to emergency care. So they had taken off to get help. The horseback riders, I don't know if they had actually found him or not. I don't think they did, but they had been looking for him, and it was getting late in the day, going to be dark soon. My dad and I were riding up. I don't even remember if my dad's motorcycle had a headlight. He might have had some sort of light, but I don't remember it being much if he had anything. But I remember getting up there into an area where if we kept going any further, the trail got pretty rugged. There was a bunch of switchbacks climbing the east face of the final push up Ben Lomond Peak. And so my dad tried a bunch of different trails going different directions, and we weren't able to find this guy. And my dad says that I wouldn't let him leave, wouldn't let him go back down the mountain until we found this guy. So we got off the bike, turned off the engine, started hollering. I think my dad might have whistled a few times pretty loud, and finally we heard this guy whistle back. I think he had yelled so many times his voice had gone hoarse, but he finally was able to get our attention, and sure enough, he sounded like he was coming from those switchbacks, going right up to the peak. So me and my dad turned the bike back on, rode up the mountain, and as we got up to this guy, sure enough, he had rolled off one of the corners of the switchback, broken his leg, and he was cold. He was laying there. He was hurt, probably in shock. And my dad had me take off my coat. My dad took off his. We put our coats on this guy, and we waited. And not too much longer, we ended up hearing a helicopter coming out of Ogden, flying up the face of the mountain. And my dad started showing me how to wave my arms big and tall, making sure we could let them know exactly where we were. This helicopter came in, pretty much put one skid on the hillside and stayed in a hover with the other skid. Those rotor blades, I don't know how close, but they must have been extremely close to hitting the hillside because of how steep it was. But the nurse or co-pilot or whoever it was got out, got the basket out, and walked out towards the front of the helicopter to make sure he didn't get too close to those rotors. And my dad helped him put this guy in the stretcher, carry him over, and put him in the helicopter. And that pilot just peeled off the hillside and dropped down the face and back into Ogden to the hospital. My dad and I rode down, and next day I think we went into the hospital to see how he was doing, and the guy was doing all right. So pretty cool adventure. But I spent a lot of years motorcycle riding, mountain biking, and hiking up to Ben Lomond Peak, Willard Peak, and the surrounding area. One of the things we actually would do is go explore some of the old mines, and that was a pretty fun aspect of this mountain range. There's a lot of mines hidden in these canyons from the old timers who used to come up here. I don't know what they were mining, gold or silver, or maybe something a little less valuable, but it was pretty cool to get up and find some of these places that these old timers were able to make it to, places that they put cabins. Like right here in the center of the screen, you kind of see that dark spot. That's a spot where they had an old rock cabin. And then just beyond this ridge, down in the middle of the trees, there's kind of a pile of dirt there. That's the tailings pile where the ore and that was brought out and dumped. And there's actually a couple of rails there from the old mine carts. So it's kind of fun to see that kind of stuff as I fly around and explore. There's a couple old remains to these bunkhouses or cabins that were up here high in these cliffs back before people had great means of getting up here. So pretty cool, pretty neat to see. Well, let's talk a little bit about how I got into paragliding. So all the way back when I was in like preschool, some of my more vivid memories were of watching skydivers jump out of an airplane and land in a park. I saw that again and again throughout elementary school, junior high. I got into remote control airplanes with my dad, flew those for many years from the time I was probably in 7th grade onward to when I was about 20 or so. And I saw skydivers. I went skydiving once, tandem with an instructor when I was 18. From the time I jumped out of the plane to the time I was on the ground was only about 3 minutes, so that didn't last long enough. I had seen paragliders a couple times flying around the mountains near my home. Never got a chance to talk to any of them. Thought it would be kind of cool. looked it up online when I was in high school, and the only things that were popping up in web crawler and all those old search engines were pointing me to places like California. And being a poor kid in high school, that really wasn't an option. But later in life, I actually met up with a guy through church, and he was into paragliding. He'd been doing it for about a year, and he took me out and gave me some instruction, and I was hooked. This is something that I just couldn't live without after that, and it's been an adventure ever since. But getting out here reminds me of the time I would come up around Willard Peak, Ben Lomond Peak, with my dad on a motorcycle, and sometimes he would pull out binoculars and we would just sit on a cliff and we would look down into the valley, and we would watch what everybody was doing, driving around on the roads, picking out the different buildings that we recognized. Where's our house? Where's the store, church, school, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, as I would sit there, I would see these birds take off from cliffs and fly around. And I thought, that is the coolest thing, to jump off a cliff or jump off a tree and soar on these ridges in the updrafts and to stay up for an indefinite amount of time. And I knew that this was something I wanted to do one day. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I wanted to do it. And for the last 14 years, I've been doing exactly what I dreamed of doing. Jumping off these hillsides, soaring around, taking in this amazing view. It has been awesome. And paragliding has been kind of an antidepressant, a stress reliever for me. When I get up there and I am paragliding, I am focused. My brain is just thinking about, how do I stay in the sky and how do I stay safe? All the little inputs that I do with my hands, weight shifting with my body, paying attention to where my wing is, paying attention to where I want to fly to and how to avoid more dangerous areas. All of that stuff's just going through my mind, and I don't have time to worry about work or other stresses in life. It just allows me to get away and free my mind from the stresses of the world. And that's one of the best parts for me about getting up here, is it truly does bring me home being a better person, a better husband, a better father, a better friend. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this sport. And that's the last frame of video I got before the battery died. So let's cut to this other clip from a couple years ago where I landed at Burger King because I was hungry. Good.
Good. What can I get for you?
Just do your 2 for $5 Whoppers, no onions, please.
Okay. Any cheese or bacon?
No, thank you. And now I will sit and eat my burgers and wait for my ride.